the Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Hello and welcome to another episode of The Best in the World with Richard Parr. My guest this week is Aimee Mullins, a former world record holder. More details on her in just a moment. But first, I just want to wish you all a happy Valentine's Day. I hope you gave the loved ones in your life something special this past Sunday. But for me, my great love is back. Yes, the Champions League, the UEFA Champions League knockout stages begin this week. By the time this goes out, Paris Saint-Germain will have already played Chelsea and Roma play Real Madrid on Wednesday, and then there's more games next week. It's great to have the greatest club competition in the world back straight after a fantastic weekend of football in the English Premier League. Amazing game between Arsenal and Leicester. I've never supported Leicester before in my life, but like probably many people who watch football around the world, are rooting for that underdog, hoping Leicester can win the league with Claudio Ranieri. It was disappointing for them that they lost to Arsenal, but a great moment for the returning Danny Welbeck from injury. And also Spurs, can they keep their title hunt alive? They got a thrilling last gasp win against Manchester City. And of course, my boys Liverpool won 6-0 Aston Villa. Even Kolo Touré got on the score sheet. Wowzers. And speaking of wowzers, let me tell you about this week's guest. It is Aimee Mullins, a former world record holder in 100 metres, 200 metres and the long jump. She represented the United States at the Paralympics in Atlanta in 1996. I just want to read you a bit from Aimee's website. Fantastic site, aimeemullins.com, AIMEEMULLINS.com. And her biography is incredible. She was born without fibula in either legs, and from there onwards, she went on to become a world-class athlete. She went to Georgetown in the United States, a full academic scholarship, and that was after she'd worked having top secret security clearance at the Pentagon, working as an intelligence analyst, and that was during her summer breaks. After being an athlete, she's been in modelling, she's been in acting, she's done one of the most downloaded TED Talks of all time. She has a very important part and has been on the board of the Women's Sports Foundation. She talks about that in this podcast. It's a fantastic chat. If I was to describe Aimee, it's driven, but driven in a great way. Driven to help society, driven in a way to help her get better and help other people get better. Really interesting talk with Aimee. She talks about setting goals, learning from the best in the world, surrounding yourself around people who say yes. Talks about coping with nerves. Talked about how she was one of the first people, the first person to use prosthetic legs, the cheetah legs. She tells me exactly what the word inspired and inspiration really means. Her time with Billie Jean King and the Women's Sports Foundation and time management and so much more. This is a jam-packed chat, and we will get to Aimee Mullins in just a moment. I just want to tell you a word from my sponsor. It is audible.com. I am giving you a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial. All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/best. That's audibletrial.com/best. You can get smarter. You can get much more smarter than anyone you know by listening to audiobooks, and I am giving you that chance for free. Take that chance. Grab it with both hands. It is audibletrial.com/best. Talking about smart. Come on, let's get a little bit smarter now. Let's listen to the best in the world. Let's listen to Aimee Mullins.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Aimee Mullins, welcome to The Best in the World with Richard Parr. Now, there's so much I want to cover with you, but why don't you tell us first what's going on in your life right now?
What's going on in my life right now? having a day off from making a movie, which happily I'm getting to shoot in New York. So just a couple of days ago, I was in a pretty outrageous costume with hair and makeup, having to say nasty things to Salma Hayek.
Oh, wow. What's the name of the movie?
It's called Drunk Parents.
Oh, wow. So
it's got a lot of the Saturday Night Live alums in it.
Oh, fantastic. So comedy, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, it's a comedy, yeah.
That's great.
I think if it was a drama, it would be a very different feeling. Drunk Parents.
Yeah, that would be a lot more of a serious movie, I think. So you've done so many different things in your life. You're now acting, you've done modelling, you've been world champion at sports. When you go into a new field, do you set goals for yourself? Do you say, this is what I want to achieve in this field, or do you just go into it and kind of see what happens?
It's actually a mixture of both. I mean, I'm always open to my curiosity. And, while I always played sport from a young age, and I, would write plays and acted in them and did the, was always involved in theater as a little girl. And I also painted and sculpted, and, these were definitely all passions of mine. Something like modeling was never a goal, ever. That happened completely, in a way by accident. It was brought on by people saying to me after I'd become a world champion in track and field, people saying things to me like, gosh, you're beautiful. You don't look disabled, and referencing my prosthetic legs. And I was like, well, that's amazing because I don't feel disabled. And the idea that one would not be beautiful if one were disabled was so interesting to me. It seemed so such an admission of something so old and that doesn't serve our culture anymore. It doesn't serve anybody. And that's where the impetus for modeling came in. But once I decide to do something, once it's like, all right, this is what I'm doing, it's just about who are the best in the world that I can work with. It's whether it's, and it was certainly that with track as well. I mean, my real passion was always in team sports, with the exception of skiing. I loved downhill skiing, but I love being a part of a team. So the isolation of track and the fact that you're always competing against yourself and, your best time in the clock in a way. I mean, others push you, certainly, but that finding myself as a champion in that field was only because I was open to curiosity. Someone suggested I run in a track meet, and I did, and I won. And the idea that a goal to represent my country in the Atlanta Games was so kind of unlikely and unrealistic. That's when it's like, right, who's the best coach I can find, what's the best training, what's everything. So it's just a matter of knowing that I'm both open to where my curiosity can take me and seeing what happens. But when something bites and I bite back, it's always about becoming the best that I can be.
So how did you find your coach? I believe it was, apologies if I pronounce his name wrong, Frank Gagliano. Obviously, that's before 1996, and there's not Google back then. So how did you come across him and find him?
So true, isn't it? Like, it's hard to remember that time when we didn't just have a search engine to type in, track coach and look it up. And I was very, very lucky to be in Washington, D.C., and Georgetown University does have one of the best track programs in the world for colleges, and a lot of Olympians come out of that program. And even the professional group that Reebok had training at the time, they're called the Enclave, they trained at Georgetown as well. So Coach Gaggs had actually been the Olympic coach for, I want to say, 92 in Barcelona. And it was just somebody told me. I mean, somebody said Georgetown has a really good track program, and I quite literally called the directory information. I asked to be put in touch with Georgetown University. They connected me. An operator picked up. I asked to be put in touch with the athletic department. They connected me. And then I asked to be put in touch with their head track coach. I didn't even know the man's name. And I certainly didn't know, that he was, a living legend in that world of track. So I just left him messages. And at that point I had competed in one race and I had won. And I just left him this ridiculous message basically saying, "Hi, my name is Aimee Mullins. I am the new national record holder in the 100-meter. And I've only run one race. And I have prosthetic legs, and I would love to be able to come sit in on a couple of your practices." And that's really what my ask was from him. Is I had no idea what a training regimen for a sprinter would be. And I just wanted to be able to sit in the bleachers and watch. And he didn't return that call, shockingly. And I think I called him 3 or 4 more times. And the last time he picked up, and I gave him my same spiel. And he's this kind of amazing presence who originally hailed from Brooklyn. So he's like, "Well, I think we should meet first before we decide anything." So I had to show up at his office, and I got there, and he was about 5 minutes late, which I always wonder if it isn't intentional, because you step into this room that is lined from floor to ceiling, quite literally, with framed certificates of all the All-Americans he's coached and the world champions and the Olympians, and the photographs of all these incredible track athletes. And I remember thinking, I'm going to make a complete idiot of myself. I didn't know anything about track, and was right about to kind of make my exit when he walked in. And we ended up having an incredible meeting, and he ended up offering me 10 times more than what I had asked for. He said, "If you show up here 4 days a week on my lunch break, I'll train you."
Oh, fantastic.
And we did that for 3 months, and then I joined the track team and started competing for Georgetown in Division I track. It was a pretty whirlwind.
And is that the process which you've used in the other parts of your life, that way of getting in touch with the most talented people, being surrounding them? Like when you've gone into acting, for example, have you searched out for the best people and gone that similar way for it? Is that what you do?
Absolutely. And the other thing is that it's ongoing. You don't. I just think you can always get better, and you can always learn from someone. And so, the idea is to surround yourself with excellence for sure, and with people who are talented and have far more knowledge and experience than you are. But it's also about surrounding yourself with people who say yes. There's so much in everyone's life where we run up against people who tell us no, who will tell us why it's not going to work, it's never going to work, and it's not going to be used, and if it did work. I'm saying? That there's so much of that kind of negativity that has a real impact. It's what stops people from starting their own business. It's what stops people from taking something that's considered a risk, but it's usually motivated by fear. The people that tell you what you can't do. So for me, a big part of that is finding people. Like the great thing about Frank Gagliano, my coach, was that he had never coached someone with prosthetic legs. So there was no paradigm for him about training me any differently than he had trained every other Olympian he coached. So it was a wonderful naivete that we both had about what to expect. So the sky was the limit. And I think that is a magical, very fertile soil to grow any anything excellent.
And how do you cope with those people in your life? Let's say they're close family or they're relatives who, let's say they are more of the no type of person. They have that negativity and yet they're family, so you can't just ignore them. How do you kind of cope with them?
Yeah, you do just ignore them. You do, actually. I mean, I'm not saying it's not about being disrespectful. I think a large part of it is understanding where a lot of that intention comes from. And certainly when it does come from family, because it always comes from a place of fear. But with your family, it's because they're concerned that you're going to be crushed if your hopes and dreams don't work out. You know, they've usually been around longer than you have, and they've had some disappointments in their life, and they want to try to protect you from disappointments. Like I think it's really useful if you understand kind of the basic psychology of where fear and insecurity come from and how they make people do and say things that actually aren't helpful. But if you can kind of forgive them for their good intentions, you know, and then genuinely ignore it. It is about ignoring people. You do have to have a technique where you can put, you know, blinders on like a horse, like, and just keep going for what you know. And you have to really know it in your cellular level. You have to know that you're going to do this, and you can't be wavered by naysayers. I mean, it's interesting how this actually, I think, is true across so many different disciplines. I was sitting on a panel with a woman who invented this company, this product Spanx, right, which is a garment that women wear that helps shape their bodies. Or, you know, it's an underlayer. And she sold it. I mean, the company is extremely successful, and she knew that she was going to have that kind of naysayer negativity, most likely from her family. And so she grew her company for the first year without telling any of them, because she also knew she was going to have setbacks. So she had reached out. She had taken her initial, investment and gotten someone to make the prototype, and she had gotten her first buyer to order a number of the products. And so when she unveiled it to her family, basically to ask for support and, you know, to do the next round of fundraising, they just told her all the reasons why it wasn't going to work. And that's when she could say, actually, it is working. I've been doing it for a year, and this is how many I've sold. And I found that so interesting that the way she described it was about protecting something very fragile. She said, if I had genuinely told my family before I had done any of this, they really would have talked me out of doing it. And it's I think she sold the company for $50 million or something. I don't even know. But, you know, at the age of 25, she was a very young entrepreneur, and she was very frank in saying, my family would have talked me out of the thing that's been the most successful thing in my life. And obviously, her family would never, that's not their intention. Her intention is always to protect you. But I think if you believe in yourself, genuinely believe in yourself on a cellular level, you have to develop that ability to let the naysayers just float by you. And it is ignoring it.
So you went from being a national champion to working with Frank, and then you started breaking world records, 100 meters, 200 meters, long jump. Which was the first one you broke, and how did you feel? Could you believe that you'd achieved this?
Yes, I could believe I achieved it. I mean, I know that sounds perhaps arrogant, but I think what I was saying about believing on a cellular level that you are going to be the best in the world. When it happens, I mean, of course, there's a moment where you pinch yourself because you have to allow yourself that joy of having reached a goal. And for me, I remember the most powerful thing was the long jump. The most powerful thing was recognizing all the people that had helped me. Because you don't do this in a void, and you don't do it in isolation. You just don't. There's so many people, and I mean, going into Radio Shack, the electronics store, and telling the manager, I wanted to buy a video camera so I could set it up on the track and record me running, so I could look at my form and work on my form. And he got so taken by this crazy dream. I had a year to transform myself and my body from someone who was a complete novice to track to a world champion. So it was an absolute immersion. And for me, it's a complete test of will. How disciplined could I be, and how much could I will this into being? And it had never happened before. There was no one else running at the collegiate level with prosthetics. And actually, the legs that were invented, the now famous cheetah legs, that was a first. So I was learning how to use these and giving, day by day feedback of what worked, what didn't work. And I wasn't even sure what was supposed to work. I had played sports my whole life with wooden legs, and I didn't, which now, if I had to put those on now, I think it would feel like I was wearing concrete boots. But, when you don't know any differently, then you make do. Yeah. So a lot of that kind of like absolute, I will. I mean, if you think about that statement, it's on many layers, on many levels, it's profound. I will. I use my will, and I will be the thing that I imagine. And I can transform myself. So realizing that, like that Radio Shack electronic store manager, he sold me the video camera at cost. He didn't make a penny profit so that I could do this. There were so many people who contributed to me going after this kind of crazy dream. That was the most impactful thing for me, was realizing that the fact that I could call that guy and say, I just set the world record today, and you're a part of that, so thank you. That's something that I still take with me the rest of my life.
Yeah, a lot of the people we've had on this show have really say that a lot of their success comes from the people and the team around them.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
We'll have more from Aimee Mullins in just a moment. Now, I'm looking at my bookshelf here in Richard Parr HQ, and one of the books I've got is The Secret Footballer, Access All Areas. I've yet to read it. It is high on my list. It's going to be one of my next books to read. But you know what? If I don't have the time to do it, I might just go and download the book as an audio book. Yes, while I'm in the gym, while I'm driving around the mean streets, well, they're not really mean, but I'm trying to sound really hip and cool there. Driving around the streets of Doha, I could be listening to that audiobook. I could be listening to The Secret Footballer, Access All Areas, the audiobook, while I'm in the gym, while I'm in the supermarket, while I'm cooking up a storm in the kitchen, and learning as I go. And you know what? I want you to have the same opportunity as me. Why should I have that all that information? Why shouldn't you? So how about you download an audiobook? And how about you do it for free on Audible? All you have to do is go to audibletrial.com/best. All right, get the pen, get the paper, get the notes app. I will say it again. Write it down. I'll even say it to you slowly. Audible Trial. That's AudibleTrial.com/best. I'm not going to spell best for you. Come on, you know how to spell best. It's the name of the show, Best in the World with Richard Parr. audibletrial.com/best. Get your free audiobook and 30-day free trial with Audible. You got to do it. You got to get smarter. Let's get a little bit more smarter with Aimee Mullins.
the Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Do you get nervous at all?
Absolutely. Oh, when I first started running, at Georgetown, the track meets were on the weekend, a Saturday morning. And I don't know, on Tuesday, sort of looking at the end of the week looming, I would start to get a feeling of nausea. And that would intensify Wednesday. By Thursday night, I wasn't sleeping. By Friday, I would be pacing and trying to figure out how I was going to tell Coach Gaggs that I shouldn't be running and I should probably quit. And of course, I never did that. I would show up Saturday morning and, you'd be shaking and then the gun would go off and you didn't hear anything else. It was just you just have to know. It's kind of like in acting one time. It's like you just kind of know your first line. Like if you've practiced and if you rehearsed, you have to trust that your body has a memory. But you don't think about form or technique, obviously, when you're competing. Like all of that your body just does it. But sometimes you just have to check when your adrenaline's pumping and the cortisol's pumping and all these kinds of stress hormones are going. What makes a champion is that they know what to do with that so that it doesn't sabotage them. And, as I've understood more of the science of it, as I've gotten older, that's the irony. I think a lot of us are much smarter athletes long after our competitive days are behind us. But that's the thing that I think is what makes watching a great athlete so electrifying, is that they're doing something very private in a very public way. They're facing fears, insecurities, demons, doubts. They're hearing all those naysayers, and they are blocked. And you see the fight. You see what's going on inside their head and in their guts and in their heart, and it's so compelling. It's so moving to watch a human being do that and do it in front of us and allow us to, in a way, touch that, be a part of it.
Was there any particular pre-race ritual or routine or anything you did which would calm you down or get you ready? And is there something in that you still use today when you're acting or modeling or doing a public speech or anything like that?
Well, for track, yeah, there was a ritual. And it wasn't about, it's funny, it's, as I'm sure most athletes will tell you, your personal best, like everyone has that race in their head or that moment in their head where it felt effortless. Like you kind of feel like you're floating and you were the fastest you've ever been, but you didn't feel like you worked at all. And that's because you hit that sweet spot of being completely loose and relaxed and completely focused and in a way charged. Like you're able to channel all that energy into the thing you need to do. And it's a magical thing when it happens. It's really magical. It's transportative. So it wasn't so much about calming me down. It was like, obviously you have to remember to breathe, breathe from your diaphragm. But it was also about getting psyched up. You had to get yourself to a place, again, where you could be your own biggest cheerleader. You could be the person going, you're going to do this. And for me, I always play the intro to U2's Pride in the Name of Love, that song about Martin Luther King, is this incredible crescendo of a drum beat that would get me where I needed to be as I walked into something like Olympic Stadium. So that was my ritual for track. I don't do that in other things. I have other rituals for public speaking, and I have other rituals for acting. And for modeling, I think it's just that you should try not to feel silly and do it.
And you've obviously inspired many people, but who inspires you right now?
I find that word, I'm very careful with that word because I think I think people oftentimes use it without really understanding the meaning. It has to do with, the root word is Latin, right? And it has to do with the breath and literally the life force, energy, to inspire, to infuse energy, to infuse life force. So when someone inspires me or something inspires me, it's changing my feeling about something. It's changing the way I think. It's changing the way I move or behave. It's not a casual thing for me, and yet I'm so privileged to be able to meet and work with people on a regular basis who really do that. Someone like Billie Jean King, I've served on the board of the Women's Sports Foundation with her for, I think, 12 years now, 12 or 13 years, and served as president for a few years. And I mean, it's an incredible organization and an incredible board where we have Layla Ali and Julie Saudi was president before me, and Dominique Dawes, American gymnast and the first African-American gold medalist in gymnastics. I'm surrounded by people who are pioneers, and certainly from women's sports, but also who used the privilege of a platform to be able to call attention to the larger social issues of equality and opportunity, to kind of keep pushing the door open a little bit wider so that more people can play. More people can experience the thing that we've gotten to experience, which is, that changes you forever when you kind of set a wildly unrealistic and unreasonable goal and you achieve it. You can never go back to, you won't let yourself be mediocre. It's like, because you just know that you're sort of cheating on what you could really do. So those are the people that genuinely inspire me, and a lot of them are people that you've never heard of, and also I'm inspired by things. I'm inspired by nature. I'm inspired by something as extraordinary as developments in technology and science. I'm so interested in what's happening right now with 3D printing and how, there was recently a lab done in Silicon Valley where they had all these children come who had various amputations on their arms. And so some of them might be missing a hand, some might be missing from the elbow down or even from the shoulder down. And these kids were allowed to design their own prosthetics and then built them with a 3D printer. And they made these incredible things like water gun hands, and like these basically things that were both entertaining for them and useful and, provocative, would be provoking conversation with the kids in their school. And this was something that 15 years ago, coming up on 20 years ago, when I did my first runway show with Alexander McQueen, it's like those were dreams of mine that was like, I want to be able to create and recreate my body. And I don't want to be made to feel that because my legs are carbon fiber and your legs are flesh and bone, that one is better than the other, or one is inherently superior. I want to be able to change my mood. I want to be able to feel good about it. I want to be able to feel celebratory even. I don't want to feel ashamed. I don't want to hide. and I don't want to apologize for who I am. And the fact that the images of what these kids designed and built for themselves absolutely inspired me to keep going, to realize like you actually can have an impact during your own lifetime, that you can help advance a societal shift towards something that's more inclusive and more open and provides more opportunity for other people to be their best and most exciting selves.
Yeah, so it's amazing, some of the advancements. Now, you have such a busy schedule and you've achieved so much. How do you organize everything?
This is where technology, is our best friend and our worst enemy. I try to be organized, but I also have learned a very necessary lesson, which is that I have to take time for myself. Because if we're always just doing and going, you don't have time to kind of look around and absorb and be, inspired or be affected or be provoked. And certainly for me, the most extraordinary things I've done in my life have happened from those moments where it was about intake and a response that was generated from me. So I've taken to set boundaries of when I check email and when I will not. I think I know I certainly feel worse when I'm vastly overscheduled. And this is, of course, from someone who is, like you said, very busy and has a very intense schedule. But I schedule playtime and rest time now the way that I schedule work time. I schedule it and I honor it. I think, and that's what keeps me going.
Yeah, my friend once said to me that I do something similar. He said, Richard, you get up to very random stuff, but it's almost like you create a time for it, and it's almost like organized randomness. So I think that's a good way to kind of enjoy life sometimes, is make sure you have time to let life take its course, I guess.
Yeah. Like you said, what did you say in the beginning of the interview? Was like you just, kind of turn up and see what happens. Like, I think it's really important to make sure that you create opportunities for that to still happen to you.
And hopefully people will spend a bit less time staring at their phones and seeing what's around them. That's becoming a little bit of a frustration for me, I think, because there's so much life out there.
I think there's going to be a natural move towards that again. I think that quality of time and quality of connection is becoming currency, because I think people want to connect. And like I said, with sports, I think sports is one of the bastions where you can't, as an athlete, you can't phone it in. You've got to be present. And when someone is present with you and giving you their full attention and giving you their energy, it feels like a gift, because it's becoming a rarity with the technology thing. But I feel like we'll see more people move back to that, because it feels good to have it.
Yeah, it feels really good. Aimee, I've really appreciated your time today. I know you're very busy, so I'm going to leave it there. All I'd like you to do is just tell people how we can continue to follow your life and your career and your success on any Twitter or Facebook or any kind of non-profit organizations you'd like people to know about. If you could just let our listeners know.
Oh, sure. Well, certainly I'm on Twitter at Aimee Mullins. and Instagram is Aimee Mullins NYC. And I think there's fan pages on Facebook, and people, absolutely post lovely things, and I learn about wonderful programs that are going on around the world, and certainly the Women's Sports Foundation, which I mentioned, is a nonprofit that I care a lot about, and as well as the Art Production Fund, which helps bring contemporary art to the public. I think anything that we can do that helps, give people a change of perspective and shifts the way we think. I think that's always a good thing.
Aimee Mullins, thank you for this interview. I feel smarter because of it. Thanks for being the best in the world.
Thank you, Richard.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.
Thanks again for Aimee for her time and for that fantastic interview. If you haven't seen her TED Talk, what are you doing? I have linked it on my Twitter page at Richard_Parr before. It's Aimee Mullins, The Opportunity of Adversity. It is a fantastic talk. It's one of the most downloaded TED Talks of all time. Once I saw that talk, I knew I had to get Aimee on the show, and I have no regrets about it, because I think you, the listener, me, the interviewer, have all learned something there from Aimee. Really great talk, really good interview with Aimee Mullins. And we've had some other great guests on the show. Maybe go back, listen to Darren Campbell last week, Etienne Stott, Chester Williams, David Campese. Fantastic athletes, world-class athletes, World Cup winners, Olympic champions, world record holders. We're in an Olympic year. We're in a Paralympic year. We're in a European Championships football year. There's so much sport going on. You're going to love it, and you're going to want to know what goes into the mind of these top athletes. Well, don't go anywhere else other than the Best in the World with Richard Parr to find that out. Subscribe on iTunes. Download the Best in the World with Richard Parr. If you like it, please tell your friends. If you don't like it, please tell me what you don't like about it so we can make it better. We want to get even more guests, and we want to make the quality of the show better every single week. I think we're doing that, but I can only know if you give me the feedback. And you can do that by going to the website richardparr.net, sending me a tweet on @Richard_Parr, and going to the Facebook page, Best in the World with Richard Parr. Thanks again to Aimee Mullins. Thanks again to you, the listener, for downloading and telling your friends and rating and reviewing, and for just being there for me at this moment. Happy Valentine's Day. Happy Champions League. And I'll speak to you next week. Take care.
The Best in the World podcast with Richard Parr.